What's up, guys? Carolina Jackpot coming at you. Picks against the spread for Saturday, October the 5th, 2019's college football games. These are Saturday's games only. I want to warn you before you start listening to my picks against the spread that I'm just a casual fan, and I have no real grasp or knowledge of the sport. I have no idea what a Will or a Sam linebacker is, and I have no idea what a cover 3, 4, 5, or a cover 69 is. Just throwing that out there, just so you'll know, okay? Just so you will know. So we got that squared away. What a disappointment tonight. UCF looks like they're going to drop the game to Cincinnati on the road. I picked them to cover the spread. So, that's kind of an unofficial pick. I won't count that one in my standings, but they did fail to cover the spread there. If it is going to finish up as it did when I started this video off. Anyway, Iowa going on the road, taking on the Michigan Wolverines. Michigan is laying 4 at home against the Hawkeyes. Of course, Iowa comes in undefeated. Michigan has one loss so far this year, 31-14, I believe it was, on the road against Wisconsin. A pretty good team in their own right. So, looking to bounce back here with a win against a decent team from the other side of the Big Ten. Michigan last week with an easy time with Rutgers, beat them by over 50 points at home, shutting Rutgers out. In fact, Iowa last week, I believe, with a 48-3 win over Middle Tennessee State, a team that Michigan kind of struggled with for about half the game in opening week. Looking at these guys and breaking them down, Iowa's got the number 5th ranked defense in the country. They have 3 good running backs. Their quarterback, Nate Stanley, is probably one of the more underrated quarterbacks in the country. Guy's thrown 8 touchdowns, no interceptions. It seems like he's always making good decisions. He's solid. This Jim Harbaugh experiment at Michigan, I just think that they're quickly falling out of love with this. You got a win last week against Rutgers, but that was coming off the heels of kind of some subpar performances there. Subpar performance at home against Army. Then you come out, you kind of smack Rutgers around a little bit. I'm not buying that as a reason for me to pick you against Iowa and covering that 4 points. I think Iowa is the better team here. I think they're more solid, and I think they're going to win this ball game. Everybody was talking about Michigan in the offseason. They're talking about Shea Patterson, Donovan Peoples-Jones. Who's the running back going to be? Who's going to complete this thing? Nobody wanted to talk about all this NFL talent that went to the draft off that defensive line. So I'm taking Iowa here over Michigan. I'm not buying the Harbaugh hype any longer, and that's that. Maryland taking on Rutgers, as we were talking about just a minute ago, on the road. Maryland laying 14 on the road against Rutgers. I have no problem here taking Maryland to cover this 14 on the road. They didn't play particularly well at all last Friday night against Penn State, but let's face it, Penn State, just a totally different level of competition here, just in another stratosphere from Rutgers. This is a team that's kind of reeling a little bit, I think, and Maryland, coming off a 59-0 loss against a top 10 team, really. We'll be looking to rebound here and get some feel-good points against Rutgers, and I think they do so, getting a win on the road and covering that 14-point spread. Here's an interesting game. Utah State at LSU. It's a couple of prolific offenses here. LSU, number 2 in the country in passing offense right now. Who would have ever thought that was going to happen before the season started? I knew the passing game was going to be improved. So they brought in Joe Brady from the New Orleans Saints to coordinate the passing game for Ed Orgeron. And I had no idea that they would be this good. The Utah State pass defense, number 101 in the country. That should tell you a lot that you need to know there. Utah State can put up some good numbers offensively. They're just going to get outmanned here on both lines of scrimmage. 27.5 points, not quite enough. I see LSU covering that spread at home. Give me the Bayou Bengals in the real Death Valley to cover that spread. Have an easy time with Utah State. May be a close game. Relatively close till halftime. Second half, I see them totally pulling away there. Purdue on the road at Penn State, and Penn State laying 28.5 at home. The always important half point. Penn State, look, they were really impressive last week against Maryland. They're coming off an extra day's rest. Purdue dropped a game at home against Minnesota. I think the score there was, I believe it was 38-31. They lost by 7 points, but they were trailing by 21 in the fourth quarter, and then scored 2 touchdowns there at the end to kind of make the final score look a little bit more respectable. I don't really think Purdue is a very good team. Penn State, on the other hand, is a very good team. Their defense is absolutely nasty. And their quarterback is doing what he needs to do there to move the ball, put 59 points up against Maryland on the road last Friday night. I don't have a problem here at all with the 28.5 points, and I'm going to take Penn State. We've seen in the past, James Franklin is one of these coaches that will run the score up. In fact, has done it several times this year. When he has the opportunity, and I think that opportunity will present itself on Saturday against Purdue in Beaver Stadium. Take Penn State there and 28.5 points. Oklahoma on the road at Kansas. Oklahoma laying 32 points on the highway in Lawrence against the Kansas Jayhawks. Just keep rolling along. Oklahoma covered spread last week. Won the game against Texas Tech by 39 points. I think Kansas has got kind of punched in the mouth by West Virginia a couple of weeks ago and is kind of reeling a little bit last week. They really got punched in the mouth and waylaid by TCU on the road in a game that, I thought might be close. And I actually had them covering the spread there. Man, was I wrong. They don't stand a chance here at all. Oklahoma is going to run all over these guys. Give me the Sooners to cover the spread there against Kansas Jayhawks. Tulane at Army. Tulane is actually 2.5-point favorites on the road at Army. A lot of people are picking Army in this game, and I'm going to take them as well. Just the triple option offense, the ability to slow the game down, defense that is decent. But Tulane being favored on the road here, that's no mistake. I mean, this is a good football team. Had the win against Houston a couple of weeks ago on a Thursday night. They're coming off a lot of rest, Tulane is. I think they played last week on Thursday night. So that's, 9 days rest there. That was actually back when Houston had De'Aaron King as a quarterback. That's how long ago that has been. So I'm going to take Army here, but Tulane is a good football team. First game of the season, a Florida international team that was thought by many to be the favorites in Conference USA. Tulane has just destroyed these guys. So they played well defensively, and on the offensive side of the ball, at quarterback is a dual threat type guy, and I look for a good ball game here. It wouldn't surprise me at all to see Tulane win this one, but I'm still going to take my best bet as Army to cover the spread here. Really impressed with them. Oklahoma State on the road at Texas Tech. We've seen what Texas Tech's going to do defensively last week when they took on Oklahoma, and that's give up a lot of points. They just cannot stop anybody. Oklahoma State with Chuba Hubbard in the backfield definitely has the weaponry to expose a porous defense such as the one that Texas Tech has at this point in time, and I'm going to take Oklahoma State here to cover the spread. They're ranked now, and I expect them to move up a few more notches this week after covering the spread and winning on the road at Texas Tech. TCU at Iowa State. TCU is 3-point underdogs at Iowa State. This is one of the better matchups of the weekend. TCU, their defense, they look like they have the better defense between the two teams, but just barely. Iowa State has good defense as well. I expect this to be a very tight game between the two. Just the passing attack of Iowa State and Brock Purdy, I think, will be the difference here. And it's time. It's time for them to start their coming out party for 2019, playing at Iowa State. Very difficult task. Last week they dropped a game to Baylor. Very close game. Could have went either way there. I'm going to take Iowa State to cover the spread here. Always giving teams a tough time in Ames, and I expect them to cover the spread here and win this game. TCU kind of coming off of an impressive performance last week against Kansas, so maybe look for a little bit of a letdown on the road in this spot. Boston College at Louisville. Boston College's defense is not look good this year. Not look very good at all. Louisville comes in with two capable running backs, and their quarterbacks, Malik Cunningham and Jawan Puma-Pass, have done a decent job. Both guys have thrown 4 touchdowns and 1 interception. The touchdown-interception ratio stats totally identical there. Seeing them a couple weeks ago at Florida State, fell behind early and then came storming back. Actually led that game late, and Florida State is like one of the only teams in the country, they are the only team in the country, I think, that have led and trailed in the fourth quarter of every football game that they played all year long. Boston College, once again, like I say, defense not playing really well this year. A.J. Dillon still having a productive year. I think he's 3rd in the nation at rushing right now. I'm still going to take Louisville here in this spot. I think they win this game at home. 5 points. Pretty tight. So it would be tempting just to take Boston College to cover in a close game, but to lose straight up. I'm going to go on ahead and take Louisville here in this spot. Baylor on the road at Kansas State. Kansas State comes in, got a really weak rush defense, but running the ball is just not Baylor's game. It's not their game. Charlie Brewer, their quarterback, done an excellent job this year. 10 touchdowns, no interceptions. This is one that I expect to be a really tight ball game between two really good teams. Kansas State in kind of rebuilding mode this year, and I expect them to get this win here at home against Baylor, and I'm going to pick them to cover the spread here, but it's not going to be by much. This is one that could be one of your 3-4 point final scores, and I'm giving them this just basically because of home field advantage, and that's it. If this game were at Baylor, it would be the opposite. Virginia Tech playing on the road at Miami. Miami is a 14-point favorite against the Hokies, and that line's actually grown from what it was. A lot of people laying money with Miami right now. Really, I can't understand why. Neither one of these teams has been very impressive this year at all. Miami coming off of a 17-12 win over Central Michigan. They were involved in a game with them Yeah, 5-point final margin. Just really disappointing. Really disappointing team this year. I think a lot of folks were looking for some big things from them. They dropped the opener to Florida, which was expected. But then the next week, they turn around, they lose the game at North Carolina. I can't talk. My team lost 2-2, but that doesn't mean anything. It still doesn't mean North Carolina's good. Miami should have beaten them. And then they had a blowout win over Bethune-Cookman, I think it was. But then you have the close game with Central Michigan. Just not looking very good on either side of the ball. Virginia Tech coming in here, they lost 45-10 at home to Duke last Friday night. I'm going to take Virginia Tech in this spot anyway. And I know it sounds crazy, but you can't tell me that Miami is that much better than Virginia Tech. I just don't think they are. I think Virginia Tech's going to be kind of in the wounded animal phase here. And you know what they always say, nobody is as bad as they looked last week, and nobody is as good as they looked last week. So I'm going to take Virginia Tech in this spot on the road at Miami to cover the spread there. Don't really think they'll win that game straight up, although it wouldn't surprise me. Like I said, I don't think Miami's that much better. But give me the Hokies here and the 14. Texas on the road at West Virginia. Texas is a 10-point favorite on the road at West Virginia. West Virginia, just not a very good football team this year. They're in rebuilding mode as well. Texas lost to LSU a few weeks ago. Kind of put a little bit of a damper on the early part of their season, but they have played well. Despite that, had a decent win at home a couple of weeks ago. I think it was a 6-point win against Oklahoma State. And this 10 points here, these games have been close between Texas and West Virginia in the past. So I'm tempted to take West Virginia in this game just because of the fact that it's in Morgantown, which is not an easy place to play. And the history of this series has been for the games to be close. But this year is just the exception. I mean, they're really, really far apart. Texas with the quarterback play of Sam Ehlinger, just taking this team on his back. Give me Texas here to cover against WV in Morgantown. Auburn on the road at Florida. Auburn is a 2.5-point favorite over Florida in the Swamp. I think this one is going to come down to Auburn's strength, which is the defensive line, versus what unit are they facing? The Florida offensive line. Florida's offensive line has not been that good this year. They've allowed some sacks. They've allowed some disruption there. Their quarterback, Kyle Trask, starting last week against Towson State. That was his second start. He actually started against Tennessee the week before. They won that game 34-3, pretty impressive fashion there, and won last week 38-0 over Towson. The eye test just tells me that Auburn is a better team. I mean, Auburn's faced a little bit tougher competition so far this year. I say a little bit. It's actually been a good bit tougher. They did get the win over Oregon in the kickoff game there at the Dallas Cowboys Stadium, and ended up they had to come from behind there and win within the last minute, but still they were able to get the win behind a true freshman quarterback. And the running game is there. I think Auburn's just a better team, and that defensive line, which is going to dominate Florida's offensive line, is going to be the difference maker here. Give me War Eagle to cover the spread here against the Gators, and we're going to find out. I mean, there's a lot of people saying Florida. Oh God, Florida's overrated. They're overrated. You hear it everywhere. Well, we're going to find out this weekend if they are or not. Both teams are undefeated. Somebody not going to be after Saturday. Air Force on the road at Navy. Air Force is 3.5-point favorites on the road here. Two service academies hooking up. Navy is 2-1. They've already had a couple of bye weeks. Air Force comes in at 3-1. Both of these teams, they both have similar stats. Of course, they both have a ton of rushing yards and very little passing yardage to speak of. Air Force has played slightly better competition, winning one of those games, which was an overtime win over Colorado, a decent Colorado team, that I happen to like. And game against Boise State, which they dropped 30-19. Navy's only real test so far this year has been a game last week on Thursday night against Memphis. I'm going to go on ahead here, and I'm going to take Air Force in this game. It just looks like the better team to me. When these service academies hook up like this, I just don't know how much of a home field advantage there really is. I just get one with my gut here. I think Air Force just facing a little bit tougher competition this year, a little bit more battle tested, and I think they'll get this win. Illinois on the road at Minnesota. Illinois is a 14-point underdog going on the road to Minneapolis. Look, Minnesota looked pretty good last week, really solid against Purdue on the road. They had that game. They were up by, I believe it was like 24 points in the second half. Was just blowing Purdue out and then allowed them to score a couple of touchdowns late to make the final score look somewhat respectable. I don't look for that to happen here. Illinois going on the road, 14 points. It's time for Minnesota. They're undefeated right now. They're wanting to be ranked. They're not ranked right now because the wins that they've had just have not been good wins. But you can get enough of them. If you can put enough of them together, they're still going to rank you because they just got to. I'm going to take Minnesota in this game to cover. I think that the skill position is just much better than Illinois. And giving me the Golden Gophers there. UNC going on the road to Georgia Tech. UNC is a 10.5-point underdog. It's going to be very interesting to see how UNC reacts to the 21-20, the 1-point loss, the so-close against the Taters this past Saturday. Do they build on that, or do they kind of go into a shell and just play a bad football game? I think that they build on that. I think that, that with Matt Brown and crew, they have a solid coaching staff there. And with Mac, Mac's got a lot of years of experience under his belt. And he's been through these kind of situations before. I'm sure that he knows how to coach a team up after a tough loss against a team that you should not have even been competing with. Let me have UNC here to cover this 10.5-point spread at Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech is a bad football team this year, especially. Trying to adopt a new spread-style offense with a bunch of players that are recruited to play the triple option. It looks to me like they're actually regressing rather than getting better at this point. You lost last weekend 24-2. to Temple. 24-2, against just a non-Power 5 team that, your coach came from there. He came from there. So he should have known what some of their tendencies were going to be. You could only muster, you scored nothing offensively against them, nothing. I'm not going to take them. I think UNC and Sam Howell is going to be a little bit too much there. Will eventually overcome them because Georgia Tech's not going to be able to move the football. Troy, the Trojans, go on the road to Missouri. Mizzou is laying 24.5 points at home. This Troy team has put some points up on the board. Has put a ton of points up against Arkansas State a couple of weeks ago in a loss. Also put up a ton of points. I believe it was against South Alabama So, they're in the Sun Belt Conference, and they don't play the level of competition that Missouri does. But, Troy, a disciplined team, it's, got a solid history there, solid history of going on the road and giving SEC teams and ACC teams some problems. And I could see this happening again here. Missouri, a team that, defensively, looked pretty good in some of their games this year. But, let's face it. My South Carolina Gamecocks should have moved the ball a couple of weeks ago against them, and they didn't, just because of abysmal play on offense. We had a hurt quarterback, and just really couldn't get anything going. I think Troy will be able to move the ball on Missouri a little bit there in Columbia. Give me the Troy Trojans here to cover this spread. I don't think they're going to win the ball game, but I think that I could see them losing by 21 points to Mizzou. I could see a 42-20 type game where Missouri, kind of piles it on a little bit late. So let me take Troy there in that spot. Northwestern on the road at Nebraska. Northwestern is a 7.5-point underdog at Nebraska. You know what time of year this is? It's not just October. It's not just the time the leaves start falling. It's not just the time it starts to get a little bit cooler outside. It's the time when Northwestern starts to play better football. Because we all know that Northwestern doesn't play their best football in September. In fact, they have some pretty piss-poor Septembers. They start to get it together. They're coming off of a loss on the road at Wisconsin, a team that was favored to beat them by like 3 scores. And they drop it 24-15. Kind of a tough, hard-fought game there. They're going on the road against another wounded animal, and they were really wounded last Saturday night, 48-7, in a primetime spot against Ohio State. Now, this is no Ohio State, but this is a team that can beat you. And I believe that they will. And give me Northwestern in this spot to cover. I think they get that game straight up. And I think Nebraska is another team that's just kind of reeling a little bit. Just not feeling the Cornhuskers as much as I was this summer. Not at all. Arizona going on the road to Colorado. Colorado 3.5-point favorites at home. Give me Steven Montez and crew here to take the win over Arizona. I think Mel Tucker and the gang will come up with a defensive scheme to neutralize Khalil Tate's feet. Just enough to get the win here. I think that'll be a close ball game as well. We've already seen Colorado go on the road as an underdog and cover and win against Arizona State. So give me the Buffs here in this spot. UGA, the Bulldogs, going on the road to take on the Tennessee Volunteers. UGA is laying 24.5 on the road. I really wish I could. I wish I could take Tennessee in this spot. I want to see them play well. I want to see a competitive ball game there tomorrow night. I have no reason to think that we will. Tennessee has just not shown me anything this year to give me one iota of hope that they will keep this game remotely close. They just haven't. They lost 34-3 in the swamp against Florida a few weeks ago. That's 31 points. Georgia's a better football team than Florida is. I just don't see them keeping it this close. I just don't see them keeping it close. I don't think they're going to be able to score. How are they going to score and move the ball? I just don't see them being able to do it. And henceforth, they're not going to be able to stop Georgia. They're going to be able to stop that running attack. And I think Georgia will put some points on them through the air as well. A couple of years ago, this one was ugly. It was 41-0 ugly. You could be looking at a similar situation here again. I have no reason to think that Tennessee will keep this game within 30, 35 points. Give me Georgia and the big number here. Going ahead and take that 24.5 points. Georgia's going to run all over. Now, I will tell you, in one of my Facebook groups I'm in something called the Callaway's Bar and Grill Pick'em Challenge as a part of the Rob and Comrade show that you may have or may not have heard me help do some co-podcasting with over the summer, and sometimes I'll join them on Facebook Live. At any rate, we pick 5 college football games a week, and there's about 30, 35 of us in the contest right now. Currently, I'm in second place. I'm in like a second place tie with like 8 or 10 other people, right? So the leader so far this year, I think he's picked. I can't remember how many I've picked right. I think it's 20. Anyway, our leader has picked 23 right. So he's got a 3-point lead on everybody else. And this is one of the games that was on our docket this week, and it was Georgia by 22 because they go with the opening line. And I actually took Tennessee in that spot. The only reason being was because I've got to make up some ground somewhere. If I'm going to be able to get into the lead in this contest, I'm going to have to be able to, pick some games and somehow or another steal a few that he gets wrong. So this would be an obvious one here that I could upset him on. So I went ahead and took this one. But, if I miss this one and I still end up 4-1 for the week, I'm still to the good. And I'll probably get it wrong, but I will be cheering for Tennessee. But I don't think it's going to happen. Michigan State on the road at Ohio State. Ohio State's 20-point favorites at home against Michigan State. Mark D'Antonio's team always brings a good defense. They've had trouble scoring points this year. They've lost one ball game, and that was a home loss, 10-7 to Arizona State, team we talked about a while ago. Ohio State has just been totally obliterating everybody they've played. I mean, they beat Cincinnati like 42-0. Was it 42, 45-0? It's 42-0. They beat Miami of Ohio like 77-5. Win, against Florida Atlantic. Florida Atlantic actually put more points on them than anybody else has. They beat Nebraska on the road 48-7. Michigan State has not shown me that they are going to be able to score to stay within 20 points of Ohio State. And Ohio State has definitely shown us that they can score and get the big numbers here necessary. 20 points with them, I don't think that you can go wrong with that. Give me Ohio State at home against Michigan State to cover that 20 points. Vanderbilt at Ole Miss. That Vanderbilt defense has been bad this year. I mean, they've been really bad. They got 60-something points to LSU a few weeks ago. Ole Miss, Matt Corral at quarterback. He's been serviceable, not great, but serviceable. Scotty Phillips, their running back, has really been having a nice year quietly. Nobody's talking about him because he plays on a really bad team. But give me Ole Miss in this spot here to cover that 7 points. Vanderbilt, like I say, decent at skill positions. But I think that we're starting to see this year what we had kind of feared over the summer, that, they were going to kind of have a little bit of trouble scoring points with Riley Neal at quarterback. Kalijah Lipscomb and Keyshawn Vaughn have not looked as good as we thought they were going to look either. Give me Ole Miss in this spot at home to cover that 7 points against Vandy. Pitt on the road at Duke. Pittsburgh has got a really nice pass rush. I mean, it's legit. Duke is coming off of a 45-10 win on the road at Virginia Tech. Kind of beware here of a letdown. I mean, they played really good in that position. Quentin Jones, their quarterback, looked good this year. Deion Jackson also looked really good for them. And I'm going to take them here at home under the lights in Wallace Wade Stadium. Give me the Dukies to cover against Pitt. But a formidable team. Pitt, another team that's quietly been a decent team this year. They had the opening loss to Virginia at home, which they didn't really look particularly good, but they come out a few weeks later. Tough defensive struggle against Penn State that they eventually dropped 17-10, and then talking about dropping, they dropped a bomb a couple weeks after that, ending UCF's 2-year regular season win streak by 1 point. So kudos to Pitt for that. But I think Duke gets the win here in conference play under the lights and covers that 4 points. Cal on the road at Oregon. That California defense is decent. This is another wounded animal, coming off kind of an upset loss at home last week against Herm Edwards and the Sun Devils, which they lost 24-17 there. Their quarterback, Chase Garbers, is not great, but effective. On the road, 20 points is a lot. I still got to keep looking back a few weeks ago, week 2, I think it was. So it's a little bit more in a few weeks. 20-19 on the road win at Washington. I got to keep looking back at that. I just don't see this team getting blown out. I don't see them getting blown out. I think they'll keep that thing closer than 20. I'm looking more in the 14-point range with the loss to Oregon. So give me Cal here in this spot to cover that number. That number's just too high. But don't think they're going to win the ball game. I guess we call this one the Toilet Bowl. UTSA, UT San Antonio, the Roadrunners on the road at UTEP. UTEP, Texas El Paso Miners. They're laying 1.5 at home. I looked on the Twitter feed for them. It's just talking about the Miner Walk. To be there for the Miner Walk tomorrow afternoon before the big UT San Antonio UTEP game. No matter how bad your team is, and this year my team's been pretty bad, you can still laugh at these guys. Oh, my goodness. Looking at them, the only thing I can compare, they both of them have been blown out a lot against the only teams that they played. Any decent team, UTSA kind of got blown out at home by Army. UTEP last week gets blown out by Southern Miss. Where I can look at and see an advantage, UT San Antonio dominated their FCS opponent, which was Incarnate Word, 35-7. UTEP did not dominate their FCS opponent, Houston Baptist. They just squeaked by in that one, 26-24. Hence, I think UTSA is just a little bit better of a team. Yeah. That's how I'm breaking it down. UTSA, you wouldn't know this, actually has the number 7 pass defense in the country. They really do. But the sad thing is UTEP can't pass the ball, so they don't throw forward passes. So give me UTSA. Roadrunners cover this game in, I guess it's the Sun Bowl. That'll be the only thing sunny about that one. Oregon State going on the road to UCLA. UCLA laying 6 at home. That number's just too big. I mean, it really is. Oregon State was within 3 points last week of beating Stanford at home. In fact, in a game which they should have won. They have a decent rushing attack, have a decent quarterback, and they're quietly getting better. They're still sitting at 1-3. But UCLA, other than just that spurt that they had against Washington State a few weeks ago, it just not looked like a very good football team still. I mean, there's questions at the quarterback position there. give me Oregon State here to cover this one, and I wouldn't be surprised to see them win that game straight up. UCLA playing in the Rose Bowl, there's not a whole heck of a lot of a home field advantage there either. Give me the Beavers in this spot to cover against the UCLA Bruins. Washington goes on the road to Stanford. KJ Costello, quarterback for Stanford's injured last week against Oregon State. They are 15-point underdogs at home against Washington, a team that has done nothing but impress. Got the big win out there a couple of weeks ago in the mountains against BYU, by 30 points. Big win last week against USC, was it 28-14? They beat the Trojans there. Stanford, just not a good football team this year. It's really, really, really having a down season there. And I'm going to take Washington in this spot to cover that spread. The spread was 15 points when Oregon took down Stanford a few weeks ago in Palo Alto. And I think Washington is just a little bit better of a football team than Oregon. So I'm going to take them to cover that 15-point spread there. Last one of the night. Boise State going on the road to take on UNLV in a Mountain West showdown. Boise State laying 23 points on the road. UNLV is a team that has given up a ton of points this year. Their defense is terrible. Gave up, I think, 52 points to Wyoming. They gave up 45 points, looks like 45-17, I think it was, to Arkansas State at home a few weeks ago. And Boise State, while, this is not an extremely high-scoring team, they definitely have the weaponry there to put points up on a defense that is as poor as the one that UNLV has. 23 points there. It's not really that many when you're comparing these two teams and just how bad that UNLV defense is. So I'm going to take Boise State here to cover that 23-point spread and get a big win on the road in conference against UNLV. All right, guys, that's my picks and predictions against the spread for week number 2. If you enjoyed this video, please hit it with a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed already. If you didn't enjoy the video, if you think that I'm just a low IQ, casual college football idiot, please feel free to hit it with a thumbs down and let me know that I have no foggy clue what I'm talking about. All right, guys, I'll see y'all later. Appreciate it. Peace. And I'm out. Go Gamecocks. Fire boom.